I'm afraid if my film is not funny to everybody,
Filthy little brat.
but I always treat it as a comedy. It's funny, you know. I thought, yes, that's something I can do. It's my style. And furthermore, I can do acting in it. I was trying to get my Project Pirates going. My relations in Hollywood were mainly with Paramount. I did two pictures with them, Rosemary's Baby, Chinatown. I had very good relationship with them. So I was hoping for that. Everything somehow collapsed and I needed to work. And I knew they had a book called The Tenant. So I went to Barry Diller. I said, Barry, how about me going to Paris and doing this book right away? He didn't know what it was even. You know, they have books they ignore sometimes for decades, you see. I think they actually had it for something like 10 years and nobody was doing anything with it. And I don't even know whether Barry read it after my asking him to do the film from it. But he trusted me and he says, yeah, absolutely, what's the budget? I said, approximately, I can't remember what it was, but it was relatively low. And it was a handshake. I went to Paris and made the movie. I knew Topor, you know. These were the times when we would meet in one of the Saint-Germain-des-Prés cafe with this type of people, this type, I mean, like me, like him, like, you know, my age, and people interested in movies, literature, etc., would meet virtually every day, you see, just to talk about, not only about films, a lot about the girls, you see, a lot about politics. And I told right away Topor that I'm going to write the script from his book because the book is with Paramount. He had no rights for the book. You know, when the studio buys a project, they buy it entirely. They don't want to have anything, you know, to do with the author after. We sat to write the script. At the same time, we started the pre-production, and we were wanting the film to be done swiftly and maybe to go to Cannes Film Festival, which will be a real stunt because there was less than a year to have it completed. Prior to that, I lived in Paris for many years. I was born in Paris, in fact, before my parents took me back to Poland. Just before World War II, my mother died in Auschwitz. My sister, who was a few years older than me, she was still a bit of a teenager, went to the same camp but survived and decided not to come back to Poland anymore. She found herself in Paris. She got married here. And after few years after war, today, at that time it seemed to me ages, but now when I look back at it, it was only, I don't know, 5, 6 years. And eventually when the Polish communist authorities started giving people possibility to reunite with some of the family. Europe was torn by war, as you know. I got a passport to go to meet my sister. I went to that was my first trip to Paris. And that was France, very much like the one you see in The Tenant. I was around 20, I was at the film school. But then later I came back again, stayed with my sister, where I was already quite advanced in the school and thinking of preparing my first feature film. You know. After that, I lived in Paris for about 3 or 4 years, trying to get work, and that didn't happen. I went to England. I had already on account one feature film, The Knife in the Water, which won at the Venice Film Festival, funny enough, the Critics' Prize, which I just won again a few weeks ago. And I was somehow hopeful of putting it together here. I started working with Gerard Brush then, and we wrote my first two films, Repulsion and Cul-de-sac. My Polish film got a nomination for the Academy Award, and I met Gene Gutowski, my future producer, who convinced me to go to England. And then in England, I started really getting, I gained great interest of various production companies, and was able finally to do my first film abroad. Abroad meaning not in Poland, which was Repulsion. Going back to France, I lived those meager years when with Gerard Brush we were trying to have films made, and it didn't work. So that was the inspiration of the Tenant.
Morning, monsieur.
The certain idiosyncrasies of French, you know, Parisians, I should say, to be honest. Their pretentiousness, their dislike of anything which is not Parisian. I wouldn't say French, I don't even have to call this type of behavior, but that's what you are talking about, that you can see in the film.
Good afternoon, madame.
Yes, what is it?
I'm sorry to bother you. I was told about an apartment.
That myself, yeah, right away. I thought, you know, it's something they can play very well. I told Barry Diller that I want to play this part, and he was very much for it. After Chinatown, you know, and everybody liked my performance of 2 minutes, there were no discussions on that subject. I had already certain popularity in France thanks to my previous movies. And since there was my first shoot in Paris, the actors were very willing to work with me.
What is this? More chairs than that? What a dump.
There is a table.
And many of those young people who are around me in the film, they were at that time café théâtre. They were sort of cabarets, you know, for often political. There were groups who were fantastic in their humor and acting. Most of those people that you see in the film come from one of those groups, and these were the very first steps on the film set.
We could throw scorpions down his chimney.
Having actors of various languages trying to sound more or less uniform is always quite difficult.
Officer, this is how it happened.
Your ID, please. Yours too, monsieur.
You have dialogues between people who are supposed to be persons of the same language or the same country, and the accents are all over the place.
Believe it. I just can't believe it. I was with her the night before. No, 2 nights before. She was in such good spirits.
She was big in France and working a lot and maybe having less hang-ups than she got later, which somehow I must say slowed down her career. But then she was well known in the theater, so yeah, she was important.
The previous tenant threw herself out of the window.
Barry Diller wanted me absolutely to use some American actors to give this film possibility of some possible American market. And of course I wanted this, but since the film was shot in English, it was great and easier to use American actors than to use the French ones.
Hello, how are you?
So that's how I did. I divided. All youngsters around me should be French, and all those monsters, like Mr. C and others, wanted them to be Americans.
This can't go on any longer, Monsieur Tralkowski. You kept everyone awake again.
Why exactly I choose this type of scene? I don't know. I wanted something that would fit the situation when Tralkowski is taking a girl to see a movie. These were the times when this type of movies were only beginning their popularity. Enter the Dragon or something like that was the period. Because I liked Bruce very much. He was a good guy, And well, I'm sad that he lived such a short life, But prior to that, when I was, when my wife Sharon was working with him, I became acquainted and we became friends. As I said, we wanted to do this swiftly and quickly, so when I was writing the script with Gérard Brache, Pierre Guffroy, the production designer, was working on the sets. Studio Épinay, which is about a half an hour from Paris, at that time anyway, is the former theater for Kino Panorama, which was an attempt for some period to have a very large screen which was filmed by 3 cameras and then joined by some mechanical mixing of those 3 pictures. But it had this shape, unusual shape, and then when the Kino Panorama projects died all over the world, this was converted into a studio. But it has this weird form of the stage, So we had to accommodate it because I wanted to have the entire action together. The entrance with the concierge, with all this glass gallery on it, the opposite side of the gallery, all was done in that peculiar shape of Kino Panorama. And there where we shot. That's how Pierre Guffroy built with it and managed to get something very interesting, because I really wanted to have all of this together, except for the exterior, which we shot on the real street of Paris. I was shown a new invention which was called Luma, it still is Luma, that allows you to have a camera at the end of the crane and operated from the post down, quite far from the place where camera is actually operating. And I got really very interested in it. This was a bunch of young people who invented it and needed some kind of promotion, and I was very happy to use it. Now they're very famous. What you see at football matches and other events of this sort, it started on the Tenant. So there was, I think, one of the first, or maybe the very first film that Sven did outside of Sweden, practically. He was Bergman's director of photography, and I think he did almost all his films. He worked on his own. He was operated and lighting, and I told him that he should try to get an operator and he will have much more freedom. I like to decide what the framing is, and to have it done by the camera is sort of following my instructions to a certain degree. That gives the director of photography much more freedom with his lighting because simply he has more time to do it on the set. And I was trying to convince Sven, who was an extremely lovable character, really. Working with him was a true pleasure. And he said, I'll try it. And since then, all his films were made with an independent camera operator. You know, I needed some effects that in those times were done on the set because all special effects were real special effects and made physically while shooting. I asked Pierre Guifroy, the production designer, with whom subsequently I made several movies. I think he was tremendously talented. Among them I did the Tess, for which, by the way, he got an Oscar. But that was our first work together. So I asked him various things that were somehow unusual at that time in France anyway, to get the effect illustrating the sequence when Tarkovsky is sick. I built a room with a reverse perspective. So that means that where I was going into depth from the camera, I was becoming smaller in proportion to the rest of the set. I was somehow disappointed with the effect, in fact, and didn't do much of it, but I kept at least, I think, one shot of it. He wrote the music, and he was with us a lot because he was intrigued by my doing a film in Paris, you know. We knew each other from his brother, whom I knew through another producer for whom he worked, and I gave him his first job on this film. But since his brother was working on the film, Philippe hung around a lot, you know, and wrote very good music, I think, to that film. Since there was a lot of glass involved, he used this Austrian guy who plays on glasses. We went to Cannes and they destroyed us in Cannes. We wrote the script very quickly and we were all very enthusiastic. So was the crew. I remember the shoot as a very happy period, you know. Everybody was involved, everybody was up. And the Minister of Culture, French Minister of Culture, whom I met before, he was very kind and I liked him because he was a nice guy and had a sense of humor. He asked me to show him the film. We were before Cannes and still working on the movie. It wasn't finished and I have no habit of showing things which are not completed. But I find myself in a difficult position in refusing him for the reason that he was the minister and that I knew him and liked him. So I said, okay. There was no music yet. No, actually, Philippe was still working on the music and we were all in a big rush to be in time for the 10th of May. The minister brought his friend. I was very much surprised, but I didn't have guts to refuse and to say, particularly because the friend was a writer and a critic. And he wrote an article about film right away that was not well received by the rest of the press, that we gave somebody an exclusivity unexpected before the film was even completed, and we met a real storm from all sides of the press. We're putting down the film even without seeing it. And when we came to Cannes, the film was not even noticed. Gérard Brache, who put a lot into that work, got literally sick. And somehow, since then, he was not getting out of his place anymore, you know. And most of the stuff he wrote afterwards, until he died, he wrote from his from his apartment.
Don't drive me to suicide.
Yeah, it's ironic, yeah, but it happened after that. It's almost comical, you know. The film was well released by Paramount because they had the necessary machinery here to in knew how, so it had good publicity, or rather, yeah, good, but not good reviews, and it was a total flop.
Paris, on a quiet street, in an old building, a dead woman's vacant apartment is waiting for the tenant. Roman Polanski is the tenant.
Oh, I don't need years. I thought it was a good movie. But now I know already that a lot of people just ask how they can have a look at it, or how can they get DVDs or whatever. So that at the beginning, you know, I found it sort of strange, but now I got used to it, and I know that it has some kind of second life.